So first example for today, it is a DiceRollerService. At the previous lesson, we learned how to create services, RESTful services from scratch using REST controller. Previously, we were creating services using REST repositories where code serving data was generated automatically using SpringBoot libraries. So we didn't have to write code like controller to serve the data. Our previous approach works quite well if we need to serve data directly from the database. But if we need to convert data in between, we pick some data from the database, we do some data transformation, combination of the data, and we serve it when we serve data which is picked from the database and serve it, we have to do some transformation in between, and it means we need to create controller and some business logic that is doing the transformation. So at the previous lesson we had a demo, a superhero service that is doing it. Just simple example for this approach. Today we will continue in this direction with DiceRoller, but this program also has a client. So it is clients, like full-scale client-server application. We have a server serving data and client JavaScript running in the browser, sending requests for the data. In these examples, server is implemented using controller, RESTful controller, because roller data is not coming from the database, it is randomly generated data. So it cannot, the approach with database cannot be used unless we randomly generate and push it into database, which doesn't make real sense. A flower data example for today is using like our previous approach, serving data directly from the database using RESTful repositories. And this program also has a JavaScript program that is sending requests for the data. If we compare these two, our flower data service example in the client has 2 pages. And you will see that it is using trick how to push data how to store data between pages, because in this program we have pages implemented by different HTMLs running different JavaScripts related to those HTMLs. So passing data between pages is tricky because essentially you are passing data between 2 programs. The way how it is dealing with it, it is storing data in local storage in a browser, like there is some way to store data in a browser. It's called local storage. It is like a cookie, but not coming from the server side, but it is similar to cookie, but it's not a cookie. But it is done by JavaScript, and it is accessible only to JavaScript. So you will see this approach today as well. So this is both examples are quite educational, and they fit nicely into concept of the course. So I feel like we should cover it. Of course, later we will have more complicated examples for services and for clients, but this is transitional examples. So let's start with cloning DiceRollerService Java Spring Boot. Clone this standard way, code copy, open IntelliJ, get from version control system, it will be cloned to Spring Boot, Control V, and this is my folder where this data, where this project will be cloned. So let's clone it and see what we have. Let's wait. Okay, done. First, let's see. Let's check service. First, I will explain service, and next, I will explain JavaScript code for the client. So let's look for the service code. Right? We have a controller, and we have a like service, RESTful service, and this is business logic. Business logic code. First, let's look at there is no databases because random data is generated like from each time. It's dice rolling imitation. In static, I have index.html and JavaScript. That is several JavaScript files that implement client, that implementing client. So let's open controller and see what we have. We have a REST controller, like in the previous lesson. A REST controller, unlike controller market with word controller without word REST, that is called MVC controller. And this is REST controller. REST controller, unlike MVC controller serving HTML pages, REST controller is serving data in terms of JSON data, or it could be JSON data, could be XML data, depending on your configuration. So this REST controller is how it is set it up. This is for JSON data. At the top of the controller, we have a mapping API / It means this mapping will be added to all addresses mentioned on top of the methods of the controller. In the previous example, that superhero service, we had a lot of methods mapped to different or similar addresses depending on the method for different request types or request methods. We had get mapping for get requests, post mapping for post request. Also, we had push. Oh, sorry. Post. Push doesn't exist. It's sorry. Post, put, and delete. Push doesn't exist. It's just sorry. So in the previous example, we had a get mapping, post method, post mapping, put mapping, and delete mapping. And I also mentioned that similar to put, there is a patch that wasn't implemented in this previous code. Patch works like put, but it's not replacing everything. It is replacing only listed items in the data. If you don't list everything in put, it will replace other items not listed with nulls, which is not nice behavior, but this is default behavior. Okay. So difference between put and patch, that put will try to replace everything, and if you don't provide the data, it will replace it with null. But patch will replace only listed data. So this is the difference. If you don't implement a method in some controller, but you send such request, you will receive response, method is not implemented. So it will be error. It will be error. And if you don't need some method due to your program logic, you just don't implement it, and you don't send that request. In this particular program, we have one method implementing get request, receiving get request at the address API/rowdice. So let's run this program and see what it is actually responding. when we send a GET request to address API/rollDice. So I'm rolling it, running it. Next, I'm opening Postman. Actually, it's open here for me. No, it's not Postman. I open Postman. Here it is. I already have DiceRoller here. I will delete the thing and create from scratch empty one. Okay. New collection. Collection is just set of things that you want to send. It is for organizational purpose. Don't save. I want to close this garbage. Previous. It keeps opening. Don't save. Can I do close all? No. Okay. Don't save. Okay, so let's create new collection. Oh, I already created new collection. I will rename it to DiceRollerService. And I will add new request, add request, get default role data, get default role data, right? So this will be to get a role data. Why it is default? Because it expects parameter 3, right? And if you don't provide it, it will use default for 3. So I will not provide this parameter for the default. So I'm sending a request to localhost 8080/API/rollDice without any parameters. So let's do that. Localhost 8080/API/roll-dice. No parameters. Roll-dice. So let's send this request and see what is the response. In the response, I got JavaScript object with data field, name it values, and value of this data field is array with 3 random numbers. Data field total, value 9, which is total, and number of dice 3. So this is response sent by this method. So it is dice roll data object. So let's open dice roll data and see what is inside. Dice roll data is interface listing methods, right? We have get values, providing list of integers, get number of dice, providing number, and get total, providing number, right? So this object was generated based on calling the methods of this object, right? In data fields names were generated based on the names of these get methods. So get values will become values, get number of dice became number of dice, and get total became total. So this was the logic of it. So this is an interface, and obviously this method returned not interface but actual object implementing interface. but system was calling this object, this method on that object. So I had to implement a DiceRollerData interface. So I created DiceRollerData implementation of DiceRollerData interface. So I created private field for list of integers. I overrode get values because I implement interface, so I'm overwriting methods. That is returning the values, this one. I overrode get number of dice, which is values dot size. It's a length of dot size is the returning length of the list. And get total is returning total. Obviously, total should be pre-calculated to match a list of the data. Okay. So I created constructor for the implementation, taking the list of the values. Next, since get values is returning the list, right? I need to make this list unmodifiable because total is pre-calculated. Otherwise, if a list is somehow modified afterwards, it will not match the total. So this is first thing in this constructor. What I will do, I will convert this list to unmodifiable list and assign it to the values. It is for logical consistency. After this, I run for each loop on the values and calculate total and assign sum to the total. And I also provide toString method to print out values for convenience. So I use string formatting similar to your string formatting in C and C++ courses that you took. Okay. So this is the implementation of this raw data. Next, my game service controller receives a DiceRollerService as constructor injection. And in order to generate this raw data, you see, I'm calling DiceRollerService getRollData for the number of dice. So I need a service to implement this random number generation logic. So DiceRollerService is interface, and in order to make it work, I need to implement it, right? So I created DiceRollerService implementation, market it with service to make it injectable, which is implement DiceRollerService interface. In the beginning of the course, we learned that in order to make program tests reproducible, we have to take random number generator outside and provide it as a parameter of the constructor. We can create also constructor without parameters by calling constructor of random number generation. This option makes test reproducible. We discussed this in the beginning of the course. So now the most important part of this method, this DiceRollerService, it is implementation of it, right? Get raw data, that is giving me raw data. So get raw data. Although I could just run random number generator on a loop and add items to the list, I decided to just be fancy here and demonstrate operations with streams. So I call a method int on random number generator, which is producing stream of int. It is int stream. So how to do it? A number of elements in the stream that I want to create, smallest number, and cutoff value. Cutoff is not included, so last number is 6. Biggest number will be 6. This would be stream of ints, but not stream of integers. In order to convert it to integers, I call box it. Boxing is the operation of converting int to integer. So now it is stream of integer. Now, in order to make a list of integers from a stream, I'm collecting the stream into a list using collectors to list. So this will produce list of integers. My constructor for dice roll data implementation expects this list, and it will calculate total. And yes, it will calculate total and will provide number of dice, which will call size of the list H. So this is the implementation of this service. So my service controller, when we send request, prints dice game is called. Dice game is called. Number of dice, since I didn't provide it, is 3 by default, right? After this, it is checking range, if it is within reasonable range between 0 and 5, because potentially it could be whatever, 10,000. I don't want this option to be available. If it is within reasonable range, it will calculate roll data for the given number. If it is outside of the range, it will print the warning here, and it will use just 3. After this, it is printing roll data for the debugging purposes to the console. So this is what I see here, 252, 252, total 9, and number of 3, number of dice 3. If I repeat it, this is repeated, right? 6, 2, 5, total 13, sorry, and number of dice 3. So this is number of dice 3. This is for default. So let's click Save and duplicate it. And now get data, get roll data for 4 dice. So let's do 4. How to provide parameters? Query parameters, it is the same as request parameters. So which parameter is expected, or not expected, but kind of can be used? It is this number of dice. You can change name generated from variable name by extra information, but by default, the name of the parameter will be variable name. So let's do number of dice. To match this, and for example 4, because I said 4. As you see, just because it is get method, get parameters of get request will be added to address line, just like sending data from a form using get. So let's see how it behaves. Send. So number of dice is 4, roll data, and this is 5352, total 15. Oops, it's not the one. 5352, total 15, number of dice is 4. So this is what was received. This is what was returned to this client. Okay, let's click Save. And this is explanation of business logic of the server side, serving the data. What if I send this request to the browser? Fine. From the browser? Fine. I can do so since I have this address line. Copy. I can open browser and do this. The same thing. Where is my browser? Here it is. Paste. Localhost 8080 API / roll dice question mark number of dice 4. Here it is. It is random each time, so this is why it's not matching this piece. So I can reload it, and reload will send new request, so I get new random data. If I don't provide number of dice, it will use 3. See, number of dice 3. So this is what is received by JavaScript in my program sending a request. So let's see. I will unzoom, otherwise it will be huge on the screen. So let's go to localhost 8080 and see what we have. Here it is. Next. When I click roll button, where this page is coming from. This page is index.html in the program. So this program does not have templates, and I didn't even include library related to templates because it's not using templates. I included web services, and test is included automatically. So when I created the project, I just added one library, web services. So in my index.html, I included a main.js script as module. That tells the system that my program is modular. It is using JavaScript modules. I hope you're a little bit familiar with modules of JavaScript, and if you are not familiar, it's still fine. I will explain it quickly. A general idea. If we try to stick all code in one JavaScript file, we will get just one huge file, hard to organize. What kind of issues we will have? Hard to browse because it is one long file. We will have issues with separation of concerns because everything in one file, you don't have a nicely organized code. Also, we may run into potential naming conflicts because it's a large file, you may have accidentally named variables the same. The ways to avoid it is to have several files included one after another. Like, for example, I included jQuery and after this main.js. Yeah, it works if we do several files included one after another. But we will have the same naming conflict issue because if we include it like standard way, not as module, variables and functions from one file will be visible automatically in other files. So yes, it works, but not really well. Also, order will be important. If we have many files, you will have many files included in specific order. And there is a better way to organize JavaScript code is to use modules. If we use modules, variables and functions are hidden in that files by default from outside view. So we export only things that needs to be visible from outside. So we do have some way to control visibility. And also, since program consists of many files, we can organize code based on separation of concerns. For example, in my code, I have module storing data in local storage. What is local storage? Local storage, it's like equivalent of a cookie, but not a cookie, it's more convenient. It is accessible, it is key value storage accessible by JavaScript only. It's not accessible by any means from a server or to a server. I also have some business logic class declared raw data, and I have one more file, main.js. This is kind of the one which is included starting place of the program. So what would be effect of running local storage in this program? This program is storing state in local storage. So next time when you open this program again, it won't start from zero. It will display previous state. So when if I roll here, and close browser, open this browser again, go to localhost 8080, and if my server is running, it will show this state. It is not stored on the server, it is stored state is stored in the browser in local storage. So how to see it? If we open inspection tools, developer tools, Control Shift I stands for inspection. Then go to application and storage, localhost. We will see dice values, and this is what is stored: 525251. Okay. So when I roll dice, it updates data in local storage. If I close browser and open again, go to localhost 8080, JavaScript will pick this and display it. I cannot really do it right now because this browser is running virtual classroom. So if I close browser, it will disconnect virtual classroom. But you're welcome to do it later to experiment with this program. It will be indeed, if you close browser, go back to local host 8080, and if server is running, it will give JavaScript. JavaScript will pick this data and display it. I will show this data. Local storage, it is per address. It means if I run another program on the same address before or after, and this program is storing different value, so it is still there. So I can delete this one. It's not using. It is from another program. I will explain the code, logic of the code, how it is dealing with local storage. So let's start from this actual idea. So storing and reading data, it is a separate task. So I separate it into file called local storage. So I have a key, hard-coded, constant dice values, and this, since local storage is key value storage, this is a key. Next, save function. How to save data in local storage? It's straightforward. Local storage is key value of JavaScript. Key. Now, since local storage can take only strings, so if I have array, raw data values, it's an array, I convert it to JSON stringify to the string and assign it to local storage. This is how I end up with this piece. So this is save function. Also, load function is returning raw data object, not array. So first, I will pick data from local storage using the same key, local storage key. I convert it into array by parsing the stuff what is returned. What is returned is a string. I convert it into array by using JSON parse, JavaScript object notation parse. So values will be array of numbers. Also remember that I have raw data. Make raw data. No, you don't remember. I didn't explain it yet. But I have a function inside, static function inside of raw data class. No, I did explain it. Oh, I didn't. No, I didn't. I have a function make raw data function, which is static inside of raw data class that is creating raw data object. So this will return raw data object, load. So this function will convert array into raw data object. I also created convenient function isSaveIt, which taking item from local storage by the key, and if key is not used in local storage, it will return null. So this function will return null if it's not saved. So isSaveIt will be not null, so it will be true if it is saved. I remember what I already said about modules. Whatever you do in module stays in module unless you export it. So in order to make these functions available from outside, I have to export it. So this is essentially how to use local storage in JavaScript. If you didn't have it in other course, so here's a brief introduction. And next, role data. Role data is my data carrying class for JavaScript. I also explained this for Java, right? So I have a constructor that takes 3 values, and they just assign it. It's not checking consistency. Total is not a sum of values. So yeah, I could add consistency check, but I didn't. Now I also need a way to create this object from array. There is a trick. JavaScript does not allow more than one constructor. I already have a constructor for 3 values. Just because I have a constructor for 3 values, I cannot create another one. So unlike in Java, where I could have 2 constructors, one for 3 values, one for 1 value, so on, now I can have only one. So instead of constructor, create a static function, make role data for the values, and I repeat the same logic. Sum 0 for each value of values. It is just now different language. Previously it was Java, now it is JavaScript. I calculate sum, and I call constructor of role data for values, for the sum variable, and length of the array. And you remember that this function is called here, make role data. Just because it is static function, I can call it using name of the class. So this is data carrying class, role data, and there is no random number generation in this program, because JavaScript program, because random data comes from server, not from the client. Right? Next, what main.js is doing? First, it is importing role data class, otherwise it won't be visible in this file. And it also needs to have a save, load, and isSaveIt functions. So they are imported from local storage.js. Next, this code is preloading images to the browser to avoid flickering. It flickers right now because it is replacing images. But what is not flickering is waiting for the image to come from a server, because images initially comes from the server. If I don't preload it, it will wait for new image to come from the server. It will add more flickering to it. So in order to avoid that, I preloaded images. How preloading works? You create image object and you assign source. Source is location. When you assign source to source property of image object, browser will send request to the server and retrieve the image file. So this is how preloading works. Now I want to retrieve not 1 image but 6 of them. So I created a loop, and I need to store these images in array. Otherwise, garbage collection will happen, and browser will discard those image objects, and potentially it will discard image files preloaded. Not necessary, but it may. So for this reason, I store image objects in the array to keep them not discarded, to keep them ready. So I create a loop for variable I running from 1 to 6 to preload images named this way. Side 1, side 2, side 3, blah, blah, blah. So I created image object and assign its source, die image source for the number. Die image source is using template to build the string for image that lives in dice and images dice. So images dice, side 1, side 2, dot pink, and so on. So this is preloading images, and now I add this image object to this array. Otherwise, this image object will be discarded by garbage collector. Next, I already explained this part. This program is updating document tree at specific locations. So, and those specific locations are pre-selected, so I don't need to browse and look for this location each time. So, I strategically found places that needs to be updated in the document tree by the code when I click this thing. So what happens? I need to update select this part. But this update of select happens not when I click on row. It happens when data is recovered from local storage. For example, previously I ran its program with 4, but default is 3. So when data is loaded from local storage, this should be flipped to 4. So this needs to be pre-selected. So to be able to flip it to 4. First. Second, when I click on row, I need to pick data from this item when I click on row, right? So in order to pick data from this item, I better have it pre-selected. So this item is selected for two purposes. One purpose to retrieve data, and one to flip this item to 5. And second reason is to pick this number after I click roll. Also, I need to select place where I will put these images, and I tried to do it simple, so I created just paragraph. So these image tags are inserted inside of paragraph. And select this piece where total is inserted. So this is what I have. Select. So this is this item pre-selected. Dice, it's a paragraph where I will insert image tags, and total is this span where I insert number. In order to select these items, document tree should be ready. Remember that browser is loading HTML and builds document tree. If browser didn't load HTML yet, or tree is not ready, I cannot select anything from it. So I have to wait till document is ready. So this is what this function is doing. $sign in jQuery, use it as a name, in this case I use it as a name of a function call, is a shortcut for jQuery. So I'm calling jQuery function on a document and call ready function on the object returned by this object. No, returned by this function call. Right? How this ready function, the ready methods of this object works? It will wait till browser finish loading HTML, and finish building a tree. After this, it will execute given function. So what happens in the given function? I select element by tag name. So if you don't have a prefix in front of the selection, it will be selection by tag name. Select. Tag name, select. And assign it to this variable. A $sign in the name of the variable doesn't have any special meaning, it is just part of the name. In the naming convention, when we use jQuery, $sign means this is, by naming convention, this is selection of something. Next, I select paragraph with ID dice images. If we have a prefix pound in front of a name, this is ID of something with ID dice images. So in my case, I have a paragraph with ID dice images, so it will select this paragraph. Okay. Next, if we have a selector starting with dot, it will select item with class name total number. Item with class name total number. It's exactly the place where I need to update the total. Why did I use three different selectors? Because it's a demo. It's not necessarily the most efficient way or the most clean way. It's a demo of different options. So I demonstrated three kinds of selectors for jQuery library. So I did this selection. Next, I'm checking is this data is saved? Do I have something saved in local storage for dice values? If I have something, it prints message to console of a browser, and then I load raw data. Next, I pick this piece and I set value from the raw data that I received. Number of dice from not received, loaded. Now from the raw data, I loaded from local storage, number of dice. So it will flip this piece. And after this, I call display the raw data, and this is the raw data that I loaded from local storage. And display raw data will update the document tree. I will explain this later. It is this one. This is a separate explanation. Next, I'm setting up on click handler for this button. So when I click on it, it will update, it will send request to the server, retrieve the data, and update this screen. So this is handle this button. So now, let's talk about this piece. So what happens when we display raw data? First, we need to update image content, images, and after this, we update total. Okay. How do I update images? This is selector of the paragraph with the dice in it. I empty it, so I remove it all images. After this, I roll loop for each value from raw values through the array. This is array. So what I do for that? For the value, I calculate location of the image, because this is location of the image. And append image tag to the dice paragraph. So this is how my update images. First I empty it, then I go through values in raw data and insert those image tags into this paragraph. So this is update images. Next I update total. And this is easy. I already have total selection and I assign text value to this tag. Raw data total text value to the tag. How do I handle clicks? On-click handler is set up in the initialization part when the document is ready. This one, right? Handle click. I select the button by ID. This button has ID roll button. And I set up on-click handler that will execute given function when I click on this button. So what happens? It will print log into console of the browser. After this, it will call request raw data, right? With what? Select val. Select val, it's a value which is selected here. For example, now select val is 4. But select val is always string. So I need to convert to integer. Value of selector is here. See this one. So when I select 5, it will be 5. So this piece is just a label. A label doesn't have to match value, but in this case it does match. Now, I got that value and I convert it to number and I call request raw data. This is request raw data. So what happens now? I print log to console of the browser and I'm sending get.json request to the address API roll dice. It is the address that we already know what it is doing. I pass parameter number of dice. So this is how to pass parameter. This is name of the parameter, this is the value. And I provide functions that will be called when we receive response. This function. So this function will be called when we receive response. So what happens in this function? Data, it is what is received. Remember that this data will have three values. Values, total, and number of dice. So I create a raw data object from those values. Here it is raw data object. I print it into console. And I call display raw data. Display raw data, what it is? Update images and update total. Right? And after this, I save it to local storage. So now it is in local storage. So if I close browser, open it again, it will show me last roll, result of the last roll. This is it. This is how this program works. Questions? I think I explained everything about this program. It's not very long. It's also a review of your JavaScript. No skills, like you have classes, you have modules, you have. This is also using jQuery selectors.